Halloween Horror Nights is our favorite time of the year at Universal. Each night, the park transforms into one of the best haunts in the country with so many amazing things to offer. So today, we're gonna go through every aspect of the event in this full guide to HHN so you know exactly what to expect. Let's get spooky. HHN is Universal's premier Halloween event that takes place here at Universal Studios, Florida. The dates for this year are September 1st through November 4th, and the hours are 6:30 p.m. till 2 in the morning. In years past, the hours have varied a little bit, especially in September, but Universal decided to make it easy on us this year and made every night the exact same. The event runs 5 nights a week from Wednesday through Sunday. The only exception here is on Halloween night because Halloween falls on a Tuesday this year, and you can bet your hind end that this park is going to be spooky to the max at Halloween.
HHN is a separately ticketed event, which means your daytime tickets to the parks won't actually get you access to Halloween Horror Nights, but there are some benefits to having a daytime ticket, and we will talk about those here in a little bit. As far as ticketed options go, you can get multi-night tickets or single-night tickets. The multi-night tickets, there's a bunch of them. There's a bunch of different options when you look at multi-night tickets. They're also known as frequent fear passes. And while we would love to be able to suggest a perfect ticket for you, we can't because it's situational. Like, depending on when you're here or how many days you're here, it's gonna change which ticket is gonna work best for you, but there is going to be a best ticket for you. The one thing that we can say for all ticket options is get them ahead of time. The ticket prices have already gone up, I think, 3 times since they released single night tickets, and I expect it to probably happen again before the event starts. So buy your tickets ahead of time so they don't cost you more money. Here's the thing, once you purchase your tickets, you still have to acquire your tickets, and there's a couple of ways to do that. So you can get a digital ticket. We don't really like doing that because if your phone dies, then you don't have a ticket, and that's not any good. What we like to do is we pick them up at the kiosk, but we don't wait until the event to pick them up. Like, we've already picked ours up, the event's weeks away, and you can pick them up ahead of time anytime you're over here, and that's what we suggest doing. But our favorite way is if you are staying at one of Universal's on-site hotels, there's a counter downstairs where you can pick up all your tickets, express passes, HHN tickets, frequent fear passes, daytime tickets. You can pick them all up downstairs at your hotel, and that is probably our favorite way because it's the quickest way.
Each night, the event begins with what Universal calls the opening scareceremony, which is a fun little celebration that happens right here just inside the gates, where some of the scare actors come out and they welcome you to the event and officially kick things off. If you are wanting to see the opening scareceremony, we suggest that you get here early because there is a limited amount of space where you can actually get a good view of this ceremony, and people start lining up as early as 1 or 2 in the afternoon just to make sure that they can actually see it. And while the opening scareceremony is amazing, we personally suggest that you start your night in stage. This is the biggest source of questions we get about HHN, so we're gonna talk about what it is, how it works, and how to get access to it. So Stay and Scream is a holding area inside of the parks, and there will be several Stay and Scream locations at this year's event, although Universal hasn't announced their exact location yet. Last year, there was one in Central Park, one in Springfield, there was another one in San Francisco, one in New York, and even one in the front of the park at Production Central. And so the parks will close to daytime guests at 5, but if you are already inside the park, you don't have to leave. At around 3:30, Universal will start putting up some barriers throughout the park, and this will be those Stay and Scream locations. The way that you get into Stay and Scream is you have to have a valid HHN ticket for that night. All you'll do is you'll take your ticket to the entrance, and there'll be team members there that'll scan you in the exact same way they would if you were coming in through the main gate. And once you get inside of Stay and Scream, you have 2 different options. Option number 1 is just to hang out, get something to drink, find somewhere to sit down, and pass the time until they let you out of Stay and Scream. But option number 2 is to go ahead and get in line for a house.
Now, not all houses are available for Stay and Scream, but when Universal decides to announce all of the Stay and Scream locations for this year, they'll announce the houses that are associated with each Stay and Scream area. But the reason that we suggest doing Stay and Scream, like the reason we're so fond of it is because it's basically like EPA for the event. So how it works is while you're staged up, they'll start letting you go through houses before they even let guests at the front of the park get into the event. It's just a great way to get some stuff done, especially if you don't have Express Pass. Last year, we consistently got through 3 or 4 houses in the first hour of the event, which just puts you well on the way to completing all 10 houses before the night's over.
A couple tips for Stay and Scream. We do suggest that you get inside one of those areas by 4:30 at the latest, because at 5 o'clock they do start kicking people out of the parks if you are not inside of Stay and Scream. Also, once you're in one of those areas, you can't leave until they release you closer to 6:30. So you want to make sure you do anything that you need to do before you get inside. So maybe that's go to the bathroom, get something to drink, fill up your cup, whatever it is, just make sure you do it beforehand, because once you enter Stay and Scream, you're stuck. Unfortunately, we only have one show at this year's event, but it's a good one, and that's Nightmare Fuel Revenge Dream. It's in the back of the park, located in the old Fear Factor Live Stadium, which is right next to Men in Black and just past the London area of Universal. You can find show times for this event on Universal's mobile app, plus they'll be posted all over the park, and it usually runs about 4 times per night. If you are wanting to see this show, we recommend getting here at least 15 to 20 minutes early. If you're here on a really busy night, you might even want to get here before that, because the stadium will fill up and they'll cut the line off at that point. And also, wear deodorant, because ew. And this is an open air show with pyrotechnics, and it is going to be hot in there. They pack you in right next to your neighbor. You're going to be sweaty shoulder to sweaty shoulder with the person next to you, regardless of if you know them or not. So just for the sake of everybody involved, wear deodorant. Of course, the biggest attraction at HHN is the 10 haunted houses, and the lineup this year looks amazing. We've got Stranger Things, The Last of Us, Chucky, Dueling Dragons. I could go on and on, because we are so excited for every single house that is coming to the event this year. But the houses at HHN are all hidden backstage. You're not just gonna be like walking through the streets of New York and bump into a giant spooky haunted house. They're all hidden. And so when you are looking for the haunted houses, you're gonna be looking for stanchions that have a sign and a wait time for each individual house. And in years past, they've been in predictable areas. They're in the same location almost every year, but we do have some construction going on in Kid Zone, and there are normally 2 entrances to houses back there. So we're not sure exactly where they're going to have those, but if you are struggling to find the entrance to any of the houses, you can pull up Universal's mobile app. They'll have a map on there that also shows your location in relation to that specific house entrance. And you can also grab an event map at the very front that'll give you a good idea of where those entrances are as well.
We figured we would finish talking about houses over here in front of Fast and Furious because they finally found a decent use for it. Last year, they had a house in it. It's wild how Fast and Furious catches strays in videos that don't have anything to do with it. But one of the reasons that we love Universal is we don't like having a plan. Like, we like coming over here and just doing whatever we want to for the day. We don't have to arrange things, maybe a dining reservation here and there, but outside of that, you come over here and the day's in front of you. With HHN, it's a little different. Now, we're not saying you have to have your whole night planned out. Matter of fact, we would say don't do that. Like, you'll have more fun if you don't have the night planned out. But you should at least have a rough idea of where the houses are before you get here. That way you're not going from like a house that's in the back of the park that you want to see, to the front of the park, to the back of the park, to the side of the park. You get what I'm saying. The time at the event's precious. Like, there's just not that many hours of the event, so you want to make sure you're spending the entire time that you can enjoying houses, enjoying the scare zones, enjoying everything, instead of walking back and forth, because you are going to walk a ton. Like, you don't need to add more steps than you're already going to walk. I'm dreading it just thinking about it. My feet hurt.
Now that we've made our first lap around the park, it's time to do it all again so that we can talk about one of our favorite things at HHN, and that is scare zones. There are 5 scare zones at this year's event, and they are full of scare actors, fog, and really cool set pieces. If you're wondering what a scare zone is, it's kind of like a haunted house without the house, or a corn maze without the corn. It's just a zone in the parks that's spooky. And not just spooky, it's spooky with a specific theme. The biggest question we get about scare zones at HHN is whether or not you can walk through the park without walking through a scare zone, and the answer is no. As soon as you walk into the park, there's a scare zone right behind me in Production Central, and then there's another one just to my left down Hollywood Boulevard. So it doesn't matter which direction you go, you are immediately going to walk through a scare zone. This scare zone right here is going to be the very first thing that you see when you walk into Halloween Horror Nights, and that is Dr. Oddfellow's collection of horror. Now, in previous years, this first scare zone that's in Production Central is usually a little bit further into the park between Minions and Minions now. But this year, this giant rig behind me, they've put it way closer to the gate. So we're not exactly sure how far this scare zone is going to run, whether it's going to go back towards where the Minion rides are, or if it's just going to be right here in the very beginning. But the story here is that Dr. Oddfellow has lured all of us patrons here under the pretense that he is going to give us immortality. But when we get here, we realize that that is all a trick, and he has now released his collection of horror on us. And I think with this one being the very first thing you see, I think it's going to kind of set the vibe for the entire event, and I think it's going to be a spooky one.
If you make a right when you first enter the park, that will bring you down Hollywood Way, which is the location of the first scare zone of the event. So this is Dark Zodiac. This is basically the story of Dr. Oddfellow taking over or harnessing the power of the Zodiac to try to become immortal. And I know we keep mentioning this Dr. Oddfellow fellow. That was the verbiage I decided to go with. But we keep mentioning him because he's the icon of the event, and he is tied to every single scare zone this year, as well as he has a house. I'm personally really excited about that because I think that having like some continuity between all the scare zones gives the scare zones a really good chance to have a great story and be really good this year. So I know Anna said that you couldn't really avoid scare zones, but you kind of can, but not really. So in big scare zones like this that have a sidewalk, walking down the sidewalk is a great way to not get scared necessarily. I mean, there's still a lot going on, but most of the props and stuff will be right in the middle of the street, and the scare actors won't be focusing on the people that are over here. So if you want to like walk through a scare zone, but you don't really want to walk through the scare zone, just go to the sidewalk and you're way less likely to have to deal with a scare actor.
Also, something else that I love about HHN is that the scare actors don't torment you. So like when you're walking through a scare zone, they'll jump out and they'll scare you, and then they'll probably laugh at you because you reacted to it and it's funny, but they don't like continue to chase the same person over and over again. At least here in Orlando, we have seen that in Hollywood, but that's what I love. They don't like stick with you, they give you your scare and then they're on to the next person. In previous years, we have gotten kind of a bonus scare zone called the Chainsaw Horde, and they usually start in this general area right here, but they kind of make their way all over the park. They do avoid the other scare zones, but it's just some scare actors with chainsaws, so be on the lookout for them. If you continue down Hollywood Boulevard, you'll run into the next scare zone just past Central Park Crepes, and that is Jungle of Doom Expedition Horror. The story with this one is that in the 1920s, Dr. Oddfellow spent some time in a jungle. We're assuming that it is this jungle right here, and he performed some experiments on the creatures inside that jungle. And now, all these years later, we're back, and there are all kinds of creepy, terrifying creatures that Dr. Oddfellow created, I guess. And I always love this scare zone because it feels so enclosed. There's like a fence on both sides, there's trees overhead, there's like lighting in the trees, there's a plane in this one, so I can guarantee that this is going to be a good one.
They're gonna eat them rats?
This scare zone here in San Francisco is Shipyard 32 Horrors Unhinged. And the story behind this one is that it is a 1940s shipping yard And the crates that you see behind me are filled with Dr. Oddfellow's oddities. And looking at the state of some of these crates, I'm going to say that some of these oddities have escaped and are going to be tormenting us when we walk through this scare zone. This one probably has the most props out of any of them. There's a ton of stuff set up here and it looks like so much fun. But this area is usually my least favorite scare zone, and it has nothing to do with the physical scare zone itself, but just the fact that this area of the park is so narrow. And the whole purpose of scare zones is that you're supposed to stop and watch and enjoy, but there's not really room to do that because most of the road is taken up with people just trying to get from one side of the park to the other. But regardless, I'm still excited to see this one.
So the last scare zone is located here in New York, and it's kind of a callback to previous scare zones. So at Halloween Horror Nights, we've had Vamp 55, we've had Vamp 85, and this year we are getting Vamp 69. Yeah, like you thought it was going to be 65, I did too. But essentially what this is Dr. Oddfellow has lured you to a music festival, and he is about to unleash a horde of vampires on you. This is probably the scare zone I'm most excited about. Vamp 85 and Vamp 55, I about said 65, were incredible. And this one's gonna be no different in my opinion. There's also a stage, so I think there might be a stage show. I hope they're like playing music. I hope that instruments are actually being used. There's a couple of them that are broke, but I hope the ones that work are actually being used. This scare zone is also one of the biggest, and it generally has the most props. So of all the scare zones, this one is like the most immersive, and you have the most room, and you've also got those sidewalks to get away from the scare items if you want to do that.
Of course, food is another big part of Halloween Horror Nights, and we did get the chance to preview some of this year's food, and it was so good. We cannot wait to get the full lineup because we know there is so much more food that is going to be coming. Last year's food was incredible, and they've already started setting up food booths all around the parks. They all look so well themed, and we know that they're going to knock it out of the park again this year. But a little bit of a tip as far as when to eat, because some of these food lines are going to be as long as some of the lines for the houses. So what we suggest doing is eating pretty early in the night. So what you should do is go to Stay and Scream and take advantage of that first rush before the houses really build up a long line. And then after that is when you should eat, because it should still be light outside at that point. And in our opinion, the scare zones and the houses are more fun when it's dark outside. So it's the perfect time to grab some food. A couple food items that you need to get as a rite of passage for HHN. Of course, pizza fries and a twisted tater are must, and you also have to get yourself a Blinky cup, and they have some really good sounding non-alcoholic drinks that you can get in a Blinky cup too this year. So either way you go, you're set. But not least, we have to talk about the Tribute Store. This year's store is based off a New York comic book store, and although Universal hasn't said where it's going to be, our personal guess is that it's going to be back here in New York where the HHN Tribute Store typically is. I guess it's possible that they have it on Hollywood Boulevard and it replaces the Jurassic Park one that's there now, but we just personally think they're going to keep with the theming. The tribute stores are always so well themed, and it is the perfect place to pick up all of your HHN merch. And on top of that, they also have some special goodies. It's usually sweets like cupcakes or cookies and things like that that you can only find in the tribute store. It's also open during the parks during the day. It's the only part of HHN that you can experience during the daytime, and that's a great time to do it if you also have daytime tickets, but make sure that you check it out.
All right, friends, you should now be ready for Halloween Horror Nights. If you have any further questions, seriously, leave them in the comments and we will do our best to answer them. If you want to check out 7 mistakes that you might be making at Halloween Horror Nights, check out this video right up here. But thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye. Pew you in the fog.
Spooky bye.